Well, good morning again, and welcome to our 15th annual Maryland Remembers Memorial event. My name is Chrissy Nizer. I'm the administrator of the Maryland Department of Transportation, Motor Vehicle Administration, and Governor Hogan's Highway Safety Representative. Each year, we come together to remember the lives of loved ones who were taken from us too suddenly in the hands of a drunk or drug driver. It is truly our honor to be with you here today as you remember your loved ones and share your memories. We all share the same goal of achieving 0 fatalities on Maryland roads, and we want to do that so that other families do not experience the same pain that you have to live with every day. We will begin today's memorial with a procession of pictures in honor of the loved ones whose lives were cut short by an impaired driver. I ask that our family members and friends to place a flag in honor of the loved ones as you place your pictures on the table. Then our law enforcement partners will come forward and present pictures on behalf of family members who are unable to attend today. We can now begin the procession.
Janet Hardy. Lynn Rosenbush, John Farrelly. Sandra Newsom. Mary Lou Wolfe. Kevin Durham. Amanda Moore. Joseph Headley, Jr. Vinnie Healy. Rory Weichbrod. Thomas Fitzgerald. David Snyder. Officer Noah Liotta. Matthew Cheswick. Dr. Salim Alam Shah. Sean Jones. Detective Sergeant Mark Perry. Christian Anthony Guerrero. Haley McGuire. Daniel Kelly. Deborah Bill. Dale Shalhorn Kevin Ryan. Brian Francis Ross Jr. and Chad Reeves. Scott Lyle Reagan and Ronald Ragland Jr. Melanie Epperly and Michael DeFrance. Karen Davis and Janine Pompacadur. Lloyd Corley and Ann Davis. Amanda Moore and Christopher Moore. Megan McAvoy and Paul Brian Michael. Scott Kern and Adam Hosinski. Rob Arbogast and Ronald Ball, Jr. Mike Kennedy and George Clark. Autumn Jenkins and Emma Grace Jester. Kenneth Norman Christian III and Elisa Celentano. David Butler and Mary and James Bussey. Robert Francis Burdett and Jim and Pam Belansky. Darius Jovan Brown and Katie Bossier. Catherine Ann Mulliken and Frank Buckett. Laura Ann Smith and Beth Sprinkle. Rahonda Tangle and Jamie Smith. Elisa Joy Withers. Brianna Monique Stanton and Kevin Stavely. Natasha Pettigrew and Jenna Marie Pollock. Garrett Petronchak and Mary Teresa Patterson. Jabari Hamilton Out and Janelle Marie Oni. Darius Joran Brown. Joseph Nelson and Zach Andrish. Jessica Vetter and Troy Vance. Vicki Ann Daniels. Lisa Valenzuela and Samantha Lynn Welling. U.S. Park Police Officer Hakeem Farthing and Earl Walker. Lawrence Garner Jr. and Sean Gangloff. Kurt Turner and Susie Tome. Gregory Hall and Brie Harris. Scott David Thomas and Gail Thayer. Richard and Luann Felgenhover and Christopher Essen. Richard Edward Felgenhauer III and Keith Ferguson. Christian Upshur and Caitlin Marie Gallagher. Laura Lamb and John Hill. Martin Kevin Herbert Jr. and Gabriel Jones. Wayne Atkins. Jordan Sprinkle. Ashley Frazier. Michael Wayne Harris. Brian Hull. Toby Sasor. And Jessica Elaine Belknap.
Thank you all so much for sharing your loved one with us today. Their faces and the memories remind us once again of the consequences of impaired driving are truly immeasurable and last well beyond the initial loss. I hope you feel the support and the love that is surrounding you in the room today. Know that sharing your stories does make a difference and it will help save lives. We have several speakers with us here today, and I'd like to recognize them before we begin. Our Governor, Larry Hogan, our Maryland State Police Superintendent, Colonel William Palazzi, and Reverend Lauren Jones, who's going to share a personal story with us here today. We have so many partners and law enforcement members here. I just want to acknowledge a few additional people. We have our State Highway Administrator, Greg Slater, with us, Kurt Erickson from the Washington Regional Alcohol Program, Lisa Spicknall from MAD, and we have from our federal partners, Stephanie Hancock and Marcia Sims from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Thank you for being here, and thanks to everyone for being here and offering their support today. We are so pleased that our first speaker is joining us again to honor your family members and friends. We all know that his personal commitment to fighting impaired driving extends well beyond this event. He is an advocate for the safety of all Marylanders on our roadways. Please join me in welcoming Governor Larry Hogan.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Administrator Neiser. It's an honor to be here with all of you today for this 15th annual Maryland Remembers ceremony as we pay tribute to those Marylanders who lost their lives at the hands of an impaired driver. It's often during this time of year that we're most reminded of the importance of family. But for many of you in this room, the holiday season is also a painful reminder that a part of your family and a piece of your heart has been lost because of the reckless actions of an impaired driver. We're gathered here today to ensure that those loved ones will never be forgotten. We're also here because together we will never stop fighting to prevent more needless deaths from drunk or drug driving. In the past 5 years, 800 people have been killed in crashes involving an impaired driver. Every death, even one, is too many. That's why our administration is committed to doing everything we possibly can to prevent future impaired driving crashes and fatalities. Maryland has a dedicated DUI team known as the State Police Impaired Driving Effort, or SPIDER. And I want to thank Colonel Palazzi, Superintendent of the State Police, for his continued commitment to that team and its mission. Since 2013, SPIDER troopers have made 3,000 arrests for DUI offenses. I want to thank all the law enforcement officers who have joined us today for the jobs that they do every day. We continue to invest in education, spending $500,000 every year to promote sober driving messages across the state. We're investing in DUI courts with the goal of providing enhanced rehabilitation and treatment of repeat offenders. I was proud to enact Noah's Law, named after Montgomery County Police Officer Noah Liotta, which requires ignition interlock devices for anyone convicted of drunk driving in Maryland. And since Noah's Law took effect in October of 2016, ignition interlock participation has increased by 10%, and the number of first-time ignition interlock participants has increased by 37%. We know that these devices save lives because last year alone, more than 3,200 people attempted to start their vehicle with a breath alcohol content above the legal limit, and they were stopped by an ignition interlock device. We're also working to toughen penalties for driving impaired. This legislative session, our administration will again in January introduce the Repeat Drunk Driving Offenders Act, which creates a felony offense punishable up to 10 years for anyone who has been convicted of a drunk or drug driving offense on 3 or more prior occasions, as well as any individual convicted of causing a death or a life-threatening injury on their second and or subsequent offenses. The average drunk driver has driven under the influence 80 times before their first arrest. We know that individuals with previous drunk driving offenses on their record are much more likely to repeat the behavior than those with no offenses. Right now, the maximum sentence available to judges is 3 years, regardless of whether it's someone's third offense or their 20th offense. We've introduced this common sense measure for the last 2 years in a row. The legislature did not act on it, but we are going to introduce it again. And with your help, and we really need your help, to ensure that this legislation finally moves forward so that we can have more tools at our disposal to hold these offenders accountable for their crimes, while also helping to protect future potential victims of repeat drunk drivers. We must do everything in our power to save lives and to prevent future tragedies. And ultimately, it all comes down to personal responsibility. More than 21,000 arrests are made for DUI every year in Maryland. There's never, ever a good reason to get behind the wheel of a car and drive while you're impaired. Working together, we can make a difference and we can save lives. So may God bless all the families and loved ones that we remember today. May God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Governor Hogan, not only for being here today, but most importantly, for your leadership role in ending impaired driving. You've been such a strong advocate for us, and I know I speak on behalf of the families how much we appreciate that. Our next guest is another leader within Maryland's law enforcement community. Colonel William Palazzi has a lengthy career with the Maryland State Police, holding every rank during his years of service. The men and women of law enforcement, they're our last line of defense from impaired drivers. Every day they go out, every night they go out, they risk their lives to protect us. We are fortunate and so grateful for all of our law enforcement partners, and in particular, Colonel William Palazzi.
Good afternoon. It has truly been my honor for the last 4 years that I've held the position of superintendent to represent all of Maryland law enforcement at this ceremony. And as you saw, many departments, regardless of what color uniform, what patches on your shoulder, collectively we work hard to try to prevent the tragedies. But unfortunately, there's much work to be done. I look forward to a day when we don't have to add another table to put all these pictures on. But honestly, I remain in awe of the victims, the families who come here year after year, willing to share their story, tragic stories. And as many of you know, there's nothing worse than that call in the middle of the night or the knock on the door, and there's a police officer standing at the door. But I can tell you, as a member of law enforcement for nearly 31 years, there's nothing worse for us than to be on the other side of that door, having to share the bad news. And it's particularly painful when it's alcohol or drug-related tragedy, because it is totally preventable, totally preventable. We continue in law enforcement to work towards zero deaths, and I know that every police officer in this state works hard each and every day. Many of them are standing at the back of the room. So I would ask you, please take a minute to thank them for what they do. It's not me and me alone. It's not any chief in this departments that are doing it. It's the men and women of law enforcement that are doing it. We continue to work hard to drive towards zero deaths. We drive down the number of preventable injuries and deaths that occur on our highways due to dangerous and, more importantly, impaired drivers. I'm proud to announce that within the state police, our enforcement is on the rise. This year, we've already arrested over 6,300 drug and drunk impaired drivers. But I'm sad to announce that just this morning, I read a report that just this past weekend, we handled 20 drug and alcohol-related crashes in 2 days, 20 crashes throughout the state of Maryland. Our Spider team, as you heard the governor mention, with the help of funding through the Department of Transportation and the Office of Highway Safety, has done incredible work. Many of them are in the back. Their sole job is to go after drug and drunk drivers based on statistic analysis of places where crashes most often occur. So I thank them collectively and individually, for their work. I'd also like to recognize the advocates, the members of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, who tirelessly work to render help to the families and victims around the clock and to get out the message. The Washington Regional Alcohol Program for their efforts to innovative programs such as free cab rides and services to those who make a bad decision but don't quite get behind the wheel. And the National Highway Safety Administration for their advocacy and education in partnership with law enforcement. Finally, I would like to thank the Maryland Department of Transportation, Motor Vehicle Administration, Ms. Nizer. They deserve a lot of the recognition for their support of law enforcement throughout the state. We continue the crusade to end these devastating tragedies. As the governor mentioned, on average, we arrest 22,000 DUIs in a year. But I assure you, we continue to implement more sobriety checkpoints, more saturation patrols, and more high-visibility enforcement. We strive to reduce those numbers the best we can. We know that there is no excuse for drinking and driving, and I know that the people in this room know it. It's the people hopefully on the other end of the cameras that receive this message, that they understand the tragedies that can be averted. Whether it's a free ride home, a cab, Uber, Lyft, designating a sober driver, these are all investments in saving lives that is apparent. Public awareness to increase enforcement is what we must do. Please know that all of Maryland's law enforcement community is with you, mourning the loss of your loved one today and every day. I thank you again for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for being here. It is an important message. May God bless you all.
Thank you, Colonel, and again, thank you to all our law enforcement officers. They're here in support of the families today, just as they support us each and every day, and so we cannot thank you enough for your partnership and all of your countless efforts. Our next speaker will stand before us and share her very personal story of how impaired driving has shaken and changed her family. And I always have such respect for individuals who are willing to come up and share that personal story because I know it is not easy. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Lauren Jones.
Good afternoon. First, I would just like to say it's truly an honor and a privilege to stand before you this afternoon and to share my family's story of how we've been negatively impacted by a drunk driver. I want to thank Christine Nizer, Governor Hogan, Colonel Pelosi, and all of those persons responsible for today's event. I am holding a picture of my family as it was in the year 2012. My husband, Gabriel Aaron Jones, was hit by a drunk driver when he was 18 years old in 2003. His van broke down on 495 in Prince George's County, and as he was pushing his van off of an exit ramp, a drunk driver hit him head on. He was on his way to a promising future. He had secured a full football scholarship to play in college. But after this crash, he had to forfeit his scholarship, and his life would be forever changed. He didn't die that night, but he spent the next year in rehabilitation, learning how to walk again, how to talk again, and how to function independently. I met Gabriel in his early 20s. We met at church. Despite his many challenges, he went on to earn a bachelor's in music education from Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. He went on to teach music education in an elementary school in Maryland, and he was a minister of music. We quickly fell in love, got married, and started our family, and we thought we had a bright future ahead of us. 2 years into our marriage, my husband started having seizures. And the doctors had stated that the seizures were a result of the traumatic brain injury that he sustained after being hit by that drunk driver. Well, we came to a place where we thought that we could manage the seizures, and we had accepted it, and we thought that the seizures were just something that we would have to live with. But sadly, 1 year after his diagnosis, we had a 2-year-old son. We had just found out we were pregnant with a little girl. my husband succumbed to that traumatic brain injury and died in a seizure on June 21st, 2013. He was 28 years old, we had a 2-year-old son, and I was 7 months pregnant with our daughter. And so my family's life was forever changed. Instead of planning for our new baby, I had to plan my husband's funeral. And I am just truly thankful for organizations like Mothers Against Drunk Driving and Maryland Remembers, who have provided a healing space for me and my family so that we could cope with our devastating loss. It has not been easy. My son is now 7 years old, and my daughter, Lacey Gabrielle, I named her for him. She's now 5 years old. She never had the opportunity to meet her wonderful, loving, and devoted father. So I just hope that my stories and the stories of so many of the other victims in this room this morning will truly make an impact so that with our collective efforts, we can truly see a victim of 0 deaths and no more drunk driving or impaired crashes. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Jones. I know that sharing that story is not easy, but it reminds us that while unfortunately the death is immediate for some, for others they suffer for years. And unfortunately, in your case, I'm so sorry that you lost Gabriel, but I appreciate you sharing your story because it's through the stories that we share that we touch other lives, and hopefully people will make the right decision and not drink and drive. We know that this is a message that must be heard, and we so much appreciate you being with us here today. It has been a tradition at this event to honor a person whose commitment to stopping these senseless deaths has truly made a difference in Maryland. Mr. Kevin Quinlan did just that, and we named the award in his honor. He dedicated his life to traffic safety, spent more than 35 years saving lives, and he truly made a lasting impact on those who were fortunate enough to know him. We are very excited to announce that our award, Kevin Quinlan Award this year, is for Dr. Beth Baker. Dr. Baker has recently retired from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, where she served as Region 3 Administrator since 1998. She began her career in 1980 when she began teaching driver education, very important skill set. And in 1989, she received her doctorate in health and safety education from the University of Maryland. She joined the Maryland Highway Safety Office, later becoming chief of the MDOT State Highway Administration Traffic Safety Division and serving as Maryland's Highway Safety Coordinator. Beth helped solidify impaired driving prevention within her 7-state region and is truly an advocate for Maryland with the highway safety partners. Her philosophy, and something she says frequently, it's people that make the program work. And Beth, you exemplified that in all of your years of public service. I'd like to invite Governor Hogan back up and Dr. Beth Baker, if you'd like to present you with the award. I think for once we actually surprised Beth. But it is truly only with partners like Dr. Baker that we come together and we're able to fight the fight to reduce the number of fatalities on our roadways to 0. We are so grateful for everybody being here today. We could not do this without you. Your family members and friends and loved ones are truly remembered today, and know that we take their stories, we take their photos with us in our hearts as we fight every day to end these senseless fatalities on our roadways, and we will continue that fight. At this point, this concludes our 15th annual Maryland Remembers event. We want to thank everyone who's helped make today possible, and we want to wish you a wonderful holiday season as well as every day. We appreciate what you do and what you have brought to us as partners. One of the things that we'd ask is you remember our law enforcement partners being here today to move over as we see them on the side of the road to keep them safe and make sure that their lives are protected on our roadways as